series of workshops is to try and get to the core understanding of what this plasma science is all about. And as we've broken it down into 6 topics, and the whole point of these workshops is we're going to start doing the very basics, and every week we will build on this knowledge. So we're only going to be introducing a few concepts at a time every week, but they are important concepts to understand, and then you'll be able to see how, by understanding the science, how it starts interacting, relating with the other aspects, so the health, the body, the nature, the plants and the trees, and then ourselves with the soul. So it's all interacting and all linked. It all comes down to the same basic principles of how the plasma operates. So hopefully in doing this, we will at least give a lot of people, particularly the new people, an opportunity just to get their mind around what this technology is all about, because there's such a huge amount of information. So if we can just impart the basic knowledge behind it, then at least it's a great stepping stone for you to begin and start studying further. So this technology is going to change the way that we understand everything in the world around us. We'll begin to understand how space travel is possible. We'll begin to understand how we can really change the health of our body, create different materials, have energy that is always available without destroying anything. And you look at transportation, the environment, agriculture, and nanotechnology. So it's a really all-encompassing technology. It's something, it's more of an extension of what we have learned up until now. Today's workshop, being part 1, we are just going to do an introduction on what plasma science is. We'll do an introduction on nano and an introduction on GANs. And then obviously every week thereafter we will start and build on this knowledge. This technology is brought to you by the Keshe Foundation, and 2 websites that are available for further information. And the founder of the foundation, Mr. Keshe, is one imparting this knowledge to us. Okay, so we're going to start off with the first section. What I'd like to do is go through the first section. I will then open the floor to questions, just a few questions. Okay, so I'm going to start off with a few quotes from Mr. Keshe as an introduction into sort of the understanding of what this new science is all about. So when we look at it, the last century, it was all about the matter state. Then we developed the nuclear and atomic knowledge, and now we have gone a step further into the fields which make the electrons, protons, and everything else we see around us. We fought the matter for thousands of years, and we couldn't manipulate it anymore. The maximum we got was making of alloys. So the maximum we've been achieved is taking this matter state and mixing it with different metals and creating different alloys, but we've still been working in the matter state. And the maximum we got was the tangibility of being able to see something and hold on to something. And that's what we've been told is the matter state, what we can see. And in the chemistry world, we mix things together, and that's as far as we have gone as well, mixing the different chemicals and creating different compounds. When the world was introduced to the atom 100 years ago, it was something new that we had to accept. And then we began to move into the nuclear era. And because of the Hiroshima bomb, people got to respect this out of the fear and not the knowledge. And now we move into the plasma, and it is peaceful, and it shows us its power with no fear. So the plasma science is beginning to understand about the knowledge and energy of the universe. If we can begin to understand how the universe works, we will know how Earth works, we'll know how our body works, because it all works in the same way when we understand the basic principles of the science. So when we start with the matter state, this is something that we all know. It's something that's been around for thousands of years. And that's what we understand in our current science is the matter state. And we try to use it and manipulate it in different ways, but it's still essentially the matter state. What we will show you during the course of these workshops is how to create, taking your matter state and how we're going to create nano layers on the matter state. So we're taking the matter state that one little step further in creating the nano layers. We will then learn how to use these nano layered plates to start making GANS materials. And from understanding and working with the GANS materials, we have begun to understand that we are really working with the fields that is generated from these GANS materials. So it's a whole process starting from the matter state, creating the nano, creating the GANS, and essentially now beginning to work in the fields. Now when we talk of the fields, they're all around us. We don't see these fields, but we know that they do exist because we've all had X-rays, been to the dentist or the doctor, and we've all had X-rays, and those X-rays are using a certain strength of field. We don't see them, but we know that they are there. We are very aware of the nuclear radiation and its effects, yet we don't see these fields either. These are also of a different strength. We see the visible light, but we need special equipment to see ultraviolet light. So light is also of a different strength. So we know that there are some fields around us that we don't see. And so this technology is just a way of us understanding that there's more and more around us than what we have discovered so far. So we just learn to go through the various steps to release these fields and use them and start using these fields in all applications of science. And then in return, we've begun to learn that from the fields, we can make the GANS material, just like we've been taught to make CO2 GANS, which is essentially produced from the fields around us, to the nano and matter state. So from the fields, we can then begin to realize that we can start making and create matter, any matter that we want using the fields. So we will learn how to tap into this energy and understand the fields of the universe, and in so doing we will then discover a new way of living on this planet and beyond. So this new understanding of the nanomaterials, the GANS and the fields is what plasma science is all about. And these fields are magnetic fields. Everything in the universe is made from magnetic fields and their interactions. From the smallest atom to our body to the universe, all are made from these fields. So it's from the ones we see and the ones we don't see. So we know that they are there, but we just never had been able to measure and have instruments to be able to understand that there are far more than what we have known. So the existence and interaction of dynamic and different strengths, speeds, and densities of magnetic fields lead to what we see as the planets around us, our galaxies, the plants, the animals, the molecules, and the atoms. Essentially, everything is made from these fields. And when we look at the spiral of the plasma, if one can imagine, this is viewed as a wound-up spring, so that we know in the very center would be the strongest point, and as we work our way out to the very outside of the spring, we get to the very weak state and weak strength of that spring. And when you have a look on the right there side, that's the matter state range. So we're right on the edge. That's where we've been playing and working with for the last thousands of years, is in the matter range. When you move into the center, you get the visible light range and the X-ray range. And this is what we've been working with and what we've understood current science at the moment. So now we begin to understand that there are far more different fields out there, and so we are learning to use them and understand them. To understand these fields, we have to understand another basic concept of understanding the magnetical and gravitational fields, or what we will commonly term as maggrav fields. We've all played with square magnets our whole life, and it's a case of understanding the different terminology now that we're going to be using. So when you have two square magnets where the fields have been dictated in those metal magnets, where you'll have a north and a south, the entry point and an exit point, and so when you bring the north and south together, the magnets will attract each other, and that's what we would term as gravitational, because it's the pulling together. When you have the same polarity at the bottom there, north and north, the magnets will repel each other and push each other away, and that's what we all term as magnetical. But this is only in the square magnets that we get these essentially two directions. I've got this little video showing you the effects for the round magnets, and when you're introducing another magnet into the other two, you'll see how they will want to position themselves, and they're always maintaining this gap, a certain distance which they're maintaining. When you add another one, the others then have to find and reposition themselves. So it's very interesting when you start viewing them from the round magnet's point of view, is that they will all find their position. So we have to ask a few questions about these round magnets. Is what force is making these round magnets move? If we move one of them, what's making the other one move? And why do they seem to keep a certain distance from each other? Why do they all move if we only move one magnet? You know, if we have 3 or 4 magnets in there and you move one of them, the other 3 or 4 will move as well. You know, so why do they do that? What is the connection that they all have? And what would happen if these magnets were round balls, and we'd have to do that in a 3-dimensional aspect, because bear in mind this is on a flat plane. So if they were round and we could do that on 3-dimensional, one could visualize this positioning that they are doing. It's like a dance that they're all doing together. So these are the questions that one has to ask. And so when we look at the distance and the gap between the magnets, it comes down to the strength of each magnet will dictate this gap and the distance between the two. So as one moves, so the other will reposition to maintain that gap. And so we're having the magnetical in repulsion and also having gravitational on the attraction. What we're essentially having is the interaction of fields of two magnets. And the fields exiting the one magnet interact and into the bottom of the next magnet. And this is how that they keep their distance from each other. This gap allows them to move freely. They're still connected and find their position, but this is how they interact with each other, is through these fields. Now bear in mind this is all in the matter state, so we have to start, and obviously in the matter state you're looking at magnets with iron based. When we start looking at this interaction in the plasmas, it has the same effect. You're dealing with the same magnetic fields, but from a plasma point of view. So we've got to understand the fields. So it's the direction of the flow of these fields which dictates what we call magnetical fields and gravitational fields. So the fields flowing out or away are magnetical, and fields flowing in towards the center is gravitational. So that is the representation on a sort of 3-dimensional basis if those magnets were round. We will go into in the next further series on the workshops exactly the formation of these magnetic fields, how they come together and interact. But what we wanted to achieve today is just how these two interact, and at the term the maggraph fields, because we will be using this terminology throughout the next presentations. And you need to understand what we are really talking about when we're talking about the maggraph fields. And it comes from the two words magnetical and gravitational. And we will then be using this in terms of sort of magnetic field strength of certain ganses and certain plasmas. But we need to understand this concept. So in summary on this first section as an introduction is plasma science is really going beyond what we have known as the matter state. So we're taking the matter state and we end up through various processes from the nano to great GANs, and we essentially get to start using the fields, which is the essence of the matter state. It's not magic, it's just something that we have yet to understand. It's always been there, but we have never understood it. So now we are just able to understand further from what we've always known in science. And we begin to understand that everything in this universe and beyond is made of magnetic fields. So that is an important point to remember, is that even your matter that you're looking at is all made of fields. And if you understand then the principle of where we're getting the magnetical and gravitational fields. So those were the two basic concepts that wanted to get across for this introduction for the plasma science, is that everything comes down to the fields, and it's how these fields interact with each other is what we see today around us.